Hello, everyone. I'm Leo K, back with another Rogues chat. I feel like a few of you have been very excited for this guest. I certainly have. I've been looking forward to this one for quite some time. Hello, Animus Drifter.
Hello. It's been a while, since we kind of decided we were gonna do this. I've been thinking up so many things to talk about as we just discussed.
Yes, I'm really excited. I feel like there is a chance this one is quite, meaty and we touch on a lot of topics. Yeah, it has been a while, definitely. Like, this has been in the plans for quite some time. There was a bunch of renovations happening around me, so I couldn't really end up doing interviews like this for a while. Yeah, let's just briefly introduce ourselves and each other. I'm sure everyone kind of knows who we are, but I mean, I'm Leo K. You're listening to this on my channel, so hopefully you know who I am. If you don't really know how to fix that for you. Good luck, I guess. Animus Drifter, mention some stuff about yourself, who you are, what you do.
I'm Animus Drifter. I'm a classic AC choreographer, mostly parkour, actually fully parkour, basically. Started out like a year and a half ago now. I think it was the end of 2022 or the start of 2023. Yeah, I've just kind of been nerding out on all the way through about how these games work and how to employ the move set and discovering some things myself. Decided, let's make a channel. Let's show people what I know.
It's awesome. Yeah, I know that you have very quickly become pretty much synonymous with like classic AC movement in a very big way, when
Kind of exploded fast. I really didn't expect it.
yeah, definitely. And it's, there's a lot of cool topics to touch on, but I mean, yeah, like I love the things you do. I love what you enjoy. I love what you're into and the way you like advocate for this classic movement system. It's my personal favorite, as you probably know. And
hmm
yeah, I mean, that's something that I think we have in common for sure. What I wanted to ask is, as I always ask, how did you get into Assassin's Creed?
Okay. I think it was I think it was like around Christmas of 2018. And I was like, okay, I heard about this franchise called AC. I wanted to get into it. And I was looking for the newest game at the time, which means that I got into AC through Odyssey.
Oh, that is very interesting and very unexpected trajectory as a player. For that to be your beginning and for you to end up here.
I know, right? So my play order was completely fucked from the start. Because I mean, if you start with Odyssey and it's the newest game at the time, you have to go back. So I went back to Origins as my second game.
Right.
That was interesting. At the time, I enjoyed it a bit more than Odyssey, simply because of the less bloat and just the gameplay felt a bit better at the time. But I had no clue what the hell I was in for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then came AC3, and then came the Ezios, and I kind of filled in the blanks later on.
Gotcha. What was the experience of like getting into the Ezio games for the first time? Like, what did that feel like?
The moment I booted an AC2 up, I felt like, okay, this is the AC that I've been waiting to play this whole time.
That's so interesting because I feel like that's very rare for players who, start with the newer games and then try to go back.
Think it
Like,
is. I think what helped me is the fact that I was expecting AC. I was expecting the image of AC that I had fed to me from before the RPG game started, because I was always a bit confused, and I was playing Odyssey and realized, wait a second, there isn't that much parkour. The stealth is there, but it's so not tool based. Like I don't feel like an assassin in the slightest.
right.
Origins helped that a bit, but I realized that's not the full thing. It can't be the full experience. And then I played the Ezio games, and the moment I started feeling how the game plays, I wasn't good at parkour, of course. I mean, I was just starting out, but
Yeah, no one is when we begin.
yeah, it just felt like that was the deal. That was the thing.
That's really cool. I love to hear that, honestly. And yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I was curious what it would feel like to be a player who started with one of the newer games because like everyone kind of knows about Assassin's Creed, right? Like I feel like if you're a gamer, there's no way you've never heard of Assassin's Creed. It's kind of like Call of Duty or Final Fantasy. Like it's just a big brand, it's a big name. You've at least heard of it, and so you probably know, the basic vibe of like, oh, dudes in hoods like stabbing people running around on rooftops. And so to not have that and to play a game named that and then for that to not be there, yeah, that probably felt a little weird.
Yeah, and I still had fun. but I just didn't really feel like I got what I was looking for. Like I didn't really get what I was expecting from the games because I was
Gotcha.
a complete and total noob. I didn't know that there was a transition into RPG gameplay and loot and like a lot of looting and all the changes that the RPGs induced. I didn't really know about them.
What have you been playing recently?
That's a great question. Recently, so okay, so this might be a bit of a surprise, but I'm mostly a sandbox game guy.
Oh yeah?
So I spent a good bit of time recently playing Satisfactory and some other similar games. I've also played a bit of Overwatch recently, just on the side, very casually, so I don't really get into competitive.
Yeah.
Used to be a very like I used to play a lot of Rocket League
Oh,
and
interesting.
a lot of scrap mechanic, but that's it's been a while since then.
So it sounds like you enjoy games that let you like learn for a long time, that like let you learn a lot of things, and especially
Sort of.
sort of, yeah.
So the thing is, with AC, I did actually kind of, slowly learn things, get better at the move set, find out what all you can do in the games. But with the other games, the process of learning was far less intentional, especially with Rocket League. I amassed like over 1,000 hours in the game, which isn't a lot relative to like a really good player, but
Right.
you still learn a good bit. And beside that, I never really felt attracted to the idea of having to slowly learn how to play a game. All of that started with AC.
I'm kind of the same, honestly. I feel like it depends on the game. Like if it's something I really love, then even learning doesn't actually feel that slow. But
Fair.
if it's something where it feels like I have to do all this like work and effort and homework like just to get into an experience, like that does tend
Hmm.
to kind of push me away a little bit, which is
Yeah.
why I think whenever I do make guide videos, I tend to target them at like beginner to intermediate players. Like they're usually things where it's like you're probably not doing easy things that will make you enjoy the game more,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
like because that's the kind of stuff that has made the biggest impact on me. Like, when I get into something, at that point, like I'm already invested. I'm totally down to
Mhm.
like experiment with the more in-depth and advanced stuff. But when I'm first starting out, I'm just like trying to figure out like why is this even fun, right?
Yeah. I think like what you described in terms of making content that appeals to beginners is like the absolute definition of your classic parkour guide.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that is like that one video that you can send to someone, and the couple of changes that you like mention, like changes to gameplay that you mentioned in that video can completely change up someone's experience, make the game like 5 times better.
Yeah, like immediately, just because it's like these are super easy things you could do. You probably don't even need to practice that much. You just change your mindset a little bit and suddenly you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
I love that kind of thing. Whenever I get something like that for me in a game, when I'm learning a new game, I just feel so good. I'm just like, yes. I want to give that feeling to other people. So,
I can tell how it's like sort of addicting, especially when I made my mod guide. The
this one
problem
here.
is like, yeah, that started out by being a very simple install guide. How to download the mod, how to install cheat engine, how to activate the mod, what is parkour mode in the mod. And then the end of the mod is like talking about safeguarded features, how to like combine the modifiers and so on and so on. So I kind of went off into the deep end near the end, but I think I at the end of the day made like a pretty comprehensive guide
I
that
hope
still
so, and I
really
think
felt
so.
like, hey, I fixed this experience for so many people.
That's
And
an
I
awesome
genuinely,
feeling.
the comments are so like it's so nice to see someone being like, okay, now I see how this works. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great feeling. I can't wait to like watch that video and make use of it myself because as you know, I've held off on like installing these mods myself because I was kind of waiting for, a day like this where I
Mhm.
could go into it like with fresh eyes because one of the things we're going to talk about later in this chat and in this interview is just this idea of what is it like to get into, AC movement as like a newer player who doesn't have that much experience, and what is it like to get into this mod as a new player who doesn't have that much experience, which,
Oh boy.
that is, a perspective that I actually have because I've not used these mods yet. So it's going to be really interesting. I mean, you kind of, there have been conversations in Sneaky Server where I've been just chilling in Discord with you guys, And I've just been like, what is this move?
How did you chain a vault into a swing just now?
Yeah, like I'm just literally seeing like eldritch like truth that like I've never encountered before. Like,
The true fucking the true reward that you get for resolving the AC2 glyphs.
yes, yes, like secret knowledge. Just mention what I've been playing as well. So of
Mhm.
course I've been playing a bunch of Destiny. I like Destiny because it represents another one of those games where I can grow into it for a long time, which Assassin's Creed also fits, like series wide. I
Mhm.
think that in AC, like the classic games tend to have more to learn than the newer
Yeah.
ones in some regards. I mean, it depends on what aspects of the game we're talking about, but certainly the ones that I most care about, like I would say the classic ones can reward you for sticking with them for a long time. And so I enjoyed that a lot.
Absolutely. It's also not just about how much there is to learn, but the different ways in which you have to learn how to play them and how they encourage this learning.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's even a topic we have written
Yep.
down.
Yep.
Yeah. Um so yeah, I've been playing a lot of Destiny, and of course, like as you know, I love rogues and I love being a rogue. They're my favorite like archetype in fiction. I love playing rogues in every video game. Um, I write stories about them, and whenever I like even roleplay with people, like I just always RP as a rogue, basically. So, Hunters and Destiny are one of my favorite rogues I've ever played. So I just enjoy that game even more because of that. And yeah,
Nothing like feeling your own fantasy be done properly.
yes, yes, it's
Yeah.
great. And I mean, there's so many like different flavors of rogue in Destiny because you know you can play different
Mhm.
subclasses on the same character, right? So that helps
I
a
get
lot
you.
as well. And then other than that, I've been playing just a bunch of Metroidvanias and Soulslikes. Like I feel like I'm always either playing a Metroidvania or a Souls-like in the background, no matter what I'm doing.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're two
I wasn't actually
genres.
aware of that being like that prominent in like your
My repertoire of
collection.
genres. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's really interesting. Like I consider Metroidvania my second favorite genre, like after stealth, and
That's
Souls-like as
very cool.
well. Yeah. Because I mean, Souls-likes and Metroidvanias have a lot of overlap, like structurally, and so
Hmm.
um, I think you know, the way you explore the world, the way you kind of have to like take enemies seriously, in one more than the other, of course. Like I just really vibe with those things, and um, I think this goes back to the way I kind of like I encourage people to not hoard items in games because it's like if something exists, it's there for you to use it and to like benefit from it. And
Hmm.
if you never use your items, it's as if you never had them, right? Like
Basically, didn't really experience the game fully.
yeah, and it's not even that. It's even just like what's the difference between getting 0 ammo throughout an entire mission and getting 15 ammo but never firing any of it, right? It's like
Hmm.
it's basically you're having the same experience, like more or less, right?
Yep.
And so that's something that you know I see a lot of players, especially beginners to games, struggling in certain scenarios where it's like you could just use an item and have more fun, right?
Yep.
And that's something that really appeals to me, and I think Souls likes are a huge like um playground for that kind of behavior and that kind of mindset where it's like you can get through Souls likes without any items, and that's kind of the beauty of them. You can experience them in that very quote unquote pure way if you want to. But if you want to be a rogue and if you want to actually like take advantage of the mechanics, then there's so much there for you and there's so many cool tricks you can do, which makes me love them. It's also why I
It
love
also
survival
plays into
horror.
the Yeah, and it also plays into the fantasy of like being proficient at what you do, being able to read the environment and then make something out of it to,
Yeah,
get through the game.
yeah, it makes you feel like an adventurer, like actually,
Yeah.
which is really, really cool. And that's kind of why I go to those games, is because they give me that feeling of being like an adventurer and a wanderer. I don't know if we're gonna actually talk about this like right now, but I did want to briefly mention it because this is something we both agreed was really important and we needed to touch on whenever we had this conversation.
Hmm.
There's this misconception and assumption on the internet when it comes to Assassin's Creed and its movement, where people are like, "Oh, the movement became good because of mods," right? And it's like that is not the case, and that's something that you want to correct, like very, you know, directly.
Yeah, I really want to correct this. The main problem is that this sentiment stems directly from the fact that people don't really know how good the old schools are.
Yeah,
It
Yeah.
stems from the fact that they see a move that they've never seen before and instantly assume this is the mod because the way they play it is hold three button because that's what the games essentially teach you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really important to, especially to newcomers to the mod or to newcomers to like classic AC parkour, modded or modless,
Hmm.
to just realize, hey, these systems and these games were amazing before the mod was made, and the mod wasn't made to fix them, although there's a couple of improvements that directly do fix some issues. The
Hmm.
mod was made to directly strengthen what these games already did so well.
Yes. Yes. It makes a good thing better.
Absolutely. One of my videos is called "The Best Parkour Just Got Better."
Yeah, I mean that's a great title, and I think probably part of the way that sort of idea started spreading around is because ACUFixes does actually do to Unity
Yep.
what people believe the classic mods do to classic AC. Because
Yep.
like without ACUFixes, there's a lot of stuff that like should have been in the game that you simply just can't reliably do, right?
Indeed. And there's a lot of similarities between how ACUFixes implements its changes. Some of those changes are tiny and simply unlock something that the game was always able to do
Mm-hmm.
and make it 10 times better in the process. And it's true that the definitive parkour mod also works in a similar way where it does very small changes and basically utilizes what the game could have done from the get-go, it just didn't really let you
Yeah.
in an artificial way.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, it's really smart. It's basically like, as I understand, we'll get into this later because I think like in-depth mod talk we're gonna save for like the second half. But
Yep.
the way I like very briefly understood it is classic AC has a lot of stuff like in the code that exists that is basically toggled off or disabled so that like general consumers don't like fuck themselves over. And
Both that and there are certain things that you can just lightly manipulate in order to basically reveal that even though they didn't necessarily intend for some features to exist, they were always there and were always able to function. For example, swinging on all beams, or
yeah, yeah.
not all beams, all swingable, like every single object that puts you into a free hang, whether it's a beam or a platform or a roof overhang, you can swing on it.
Yeah, yeah. Which makes sense because
Yeah.
like it probably stems from the same like logic node basically. Like maybe not the
Basically.
best way to put it, but just like a visual for people to kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be something interesting to talk about. But yeah, like
Hmm.
huge thing. We'll touch on that later. Classic AC movement is good even without mods. What this does lead into though is why do we love classic AC movement so much? Whenever players like you and me talk about these games, you know, people online sometimes they can be a little confused. They're like, "Whoa, these guys really love like AC1 to Rev the most? Like what's up with that?" Right? Like
Yeah.
how is that possible? Like what are they crazy? Like what are did they play a different game? And it's like, no, we didn't play a different game. We just maybe played a little more of the game, you know, like
Or a lot more of the game
or
than
a
we played
lot
the game
more. Yeah.
before. So the thing is, when you start out with the old schools, um, you don't really get taught anything almost,
Yeah.
and everything you get taught that's actually completely and perpetually like available to you makes it just basically tells you, hey, this is useful in these two contexts, and it doesn't really make you think, hey, can I use this move that's ever present somewhere else in the map?
A great example is like being taught side ejects in tombs. It's like, oh great, I can use this to finish this one part of this one level. I will
Yep.
now forget this and never think about it again.
And then there's us in like a normal like parkour run, just opening up the game to free roam in it and using these same side ejects like 10 times per minute to properly optimize movement.
Yeah, because you can
And
do
it's
them anywhere.
insane. It's such, yeah, it's such a big difference. And all you need to do is just, hey, start using these ejects.
I think that's why classic AC is very like affected by the kind of guides that you know I was talking about earlier where it's like you don't even
Mhm.
really need to practice that much. You just need a mindset change. You need to know what is possible, and then as soon as you start doing it you're immediately having more fun because the games straight
Yeah,
up just don't remind the player and don't surface that knowledge to the player enough to kind of remind them like, hey, you can be doing this, you know.
absolutely.
And that's why people have this idea of it's just hold parkour and forward. And it's like, it can be that because that's like the beauty of, how they're accessible, but that's not all
Just
it
means you're
is.
not really playing the game. That's not the part that we love.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's not the part that we love.
I mean, as much as it's crucial to be able to hold the three buttons, what we really love about it is just the fact that once you actually unlock this move set in your own brain, once you get used to using it and start reading the environment around you properly, you can instantly transfer everything that's like everything you want to do, every single bit of your intent into an input, and it's gonna work
Yeah.
reliably.
Yeah. That's what I love about it, is the idea that like whenever I play classic AC, or let me start the, you know, story in reverse. Whenever I play modern AC, there are so many moments where I'm like, I want to jump to this, or like I want to like go down here, or I want to, hop over to this way. And then I
Yep.
do it. I do something that would work in like any other game, and like maybe not even AC, but like just normal games, and it like
Yep.
doesn't work. And then whenever I play old school AC and classic AC, whenever I'm like, I want to jump to this, I want to like cancel this action, or like I have these ideas of how I want to move that are like instinctive. I don't even think about it, right? And it just
Yep.
lets me move like that, and there's no disconnect, right? Whereas I think like a very painful feeling for players like you and me is like whenever we're playing something like, I don't know, like Valhalla or Mirage or whatever, we try to do like an action and the game basically just says no to us, right? Like it like stops us for what feels like no reason. And of course, like there
It
is a
says no to
reason.
something that like a game from 10 years before it could have done.
Yeah, yeah. I think that,
Absolutely no issue.
yeah. And again, like these new games, they're not bad games. Like they're great. Like Mirage is one of my favorites in the series. But I think it's
Mhm.
it's really important to like recognize that and acknowledge that like that is an unpleasant feeling. To have an intent, to have something you
Yeah.
want to do, and then to basically, for reasons that feel very unreasonable, just kind of be told no, like you can't do this, and it's like, oh, okay, so this instinct that I had, like now my character's not moving the way I want to, right? Like,
Yep. And you can't trust it. You can't trust your own inputs. You can't really trust anything. So you resort to either constantly trying to do something more than the game can allow you to do and hoping that the context is right, that it's gonna do something for you that you want it to do.
mhm.
Or you're gonna completely give up and just get back to holding those three buttons and call it a day.
Yeah, because at least that works. And I think it's really interesting to actually think about this because an interesting perspective to have on this is that modern AC, uh, like, kind of lets you do too little with your buttons, and then classic
Yep.
AC kind of lets you do too much. But the difference is the system that lets you do too much, you can actually control that. You can compensate for that. But in a system that lets you do too little, when you brush up against the ceiling, there's nothing you can do. You're hard stopped there. And so I think that is why we tend to have this preference where it's like, at least in the old system, like we're able to decide for ourselves. Whereas in the new one, if we want to do something that the game is just like incapable of, then we literally can't do anything about it, you know?
Just doesn't let you, and that's it.
Yeah.
End of the road.
Yeah. That's a great way of thinking about it. That's definitely why I love classic movement, is just this idea that whatever I think I want to do, I can do it. It lets me do it. And if I mess it up, then it's usually either my fault, or even in cases where it's the system's fault, I have ways to deal with it.
Yep. And
Whereas,
that's also like goes back to, hey, movement without mods is still good.
yes,
Because you can work around some of the limitations that the games have on a systemic level, even in vanilla.
yeah,
Whether you're gonna use some unintended features or you're simply gonna take a slightly longer and slower route, you can still get to where you want to be
yeah.
and still retain all of that controllability and intent.
That's what I love about it. I mean, even something as simple as just, although there is an element of like slight randomness and jank just because you can't get rid of all of it with an automated system,
Hmm.
there are ways to like logically spot that kind of stuff. So, every newcomer, every new AC player, when they play the classic games, that's one of the first things they learn. When I run near an edge, Ezio sometimes jumps off for no reason. It's like, okay, so what causes me to jump off? It's because I'm holding high profile and legs together.
Which is the
So,
jump bind.
yeah, which is the jump bind. So, whenever I'm near a ledge, maybe I'll just briefly let go of legs so that I'm only jogging, right? And then that gives you a little more control. Or like whenever I'm cornering, Ezio runs up the wall randomly, right? And it's like, he's too sensitive. Like he just randomly runs up the wall. Okay, so maybe I'll just let go of legs when I'm cornering and then hold legs again when I'm peeling out. Yeah. It's like little things like that. Whereas in the new games, it's just kind of like Basim refuses to make this jump. I guess I just can't make that jump. Like, and to their credit, like this is why I love Bordeaux and why like I have so much respect for them. They knew about this stuff and they heard about this stuff. They heard our feedback. They heard what we wanted and our wishes, and they were like, look, we can't like make this the system that they want, but we can make it like as good as we can. And they even patched it after release, which was crazy to me.
106 is insane.
Like the fact that it even exists.
Yeah, the thing is, right? Mirage is honestly one of my least favorite AC experiences that I've played.
Yeah, and I don't blame you because like,
Go
yeah.
is like my favorite like AC studio to date.
Yes, yes, that's such a great way of putting it. And if people are confused listening to that, like you really shouldn't be, because it makes so much sense. Mirage isn't the movement system we want it to be, and like, Animus Drifter is a very movement oriented player, right? Like you can't really enjoy a game like this if it doesn't have, your favorite thing, which is totally fair. The sort of limitations that the game inherits from Valhalla and from previous games mean that it can never really be the game we want it to be, like at the end of the day. And yet, the people who make it care so much that even with that, they're still willing to do their best to give us the closest thing to what we're looking for. That is insane to me.
Insane.
Like,
it's so insane.
I'm just so blown away that they even cared enough to do that, because it's like, yeah, I mean the way people said it really really like blows me away. Like we've never had a patch for parkour in all these games.
Oh, there's more to it as well. Like the fact that in the patch they directly and literally mention side and back ejects.
Yeah.
As far as I remember, ACs in previous games don't officially say the word side eject or back eject. It's either like wall eject or advanced wall jump or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, like in the AC2
Bordeaux
tombs.
took from the community, from the terminology that the community made up for these moves, and used that as a reference point on what to add and change in the game.
Yeah, that's how you can tell how hooked in tune they are to the way people talk about their games. So like this studio cares, and it's to the point where that was enough for me to closely follow anything they do from now on. There are rumors that they're like a support studio now for AC Shadows, and I'm just like, you know what? Like that immediately makes me more interested in that game than I was before.
We're so for real manifesting ejects and shadows. Give us good ejects at least, please.
I don't.
I really hope that they don't fully relegate like every single parkour improvement to the grapple hook. I really want them to just improve the base system and then make the grapple hook also slap ass. Like
Yes, that's ideal.
both to be present.
Yeah, because like that was kind of how Syndicate felt like. I mean, Syndicate, like it gave you the sense of like the grappling hook was a solution to a problem instead of being an extra tool for the player to like, deepen their own experience. Like those are two very different kind of design directions and design philosophies, right? Like, I mean, compare like Batman's like grapnel gun in the Arkham series. Like there are so many ways you can use it. There are so many different like actions that go into it and come out of it, right?
And there's also a lot of synergy.
With other mechanics.
Absolutely. And in Syndicate, it's like that's the peak of the building. You're going there now.
Yeah, that's it. About the
You can't choose whether you're gonna do it from like a midair state. No, you gotta be standing and you gotta be aiming at a peak of a building. And that's
yeah,
it.
it doesn't really interact with guards. It doesn't really interact with combat. Pretty much the only like real synergy it has with other gameplay is, you can instantly get to a rooftop after like assassinating someone to like flee immediately, which is, yeah.
Sorry. One thing that feels also kind of semi-insulting about Syndicate is not only the fact that they added a grapple hook, but they added it as a fix to a system that they themselves downgraded. Because Syndicate's movement system is in many ways a direct downgrade from Unity, and of course I have my issues with Unity, but if Syndicate had the slightly more reliable ejects that it for some reason makes less reliable, or allowed for manual jumps, or kept a normal proper parkour down bias, even that would already instill a greater amount of synergy with how the grapple hook works, because then the grapple hook would be less of a fix and more of an addition.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I'm so sad that I can't find those videos now, but before Syndicate came out, there were these previews with like they were doing interviews with players like in focus groups or whatever.
mhm.
And they were public videos, like they were part of presentations because like after Unity came out, like I don't know if you were there for the Syndicate reveal.
I wasn't.
Okay, well, the way it kind of worked out is maybe we can even watch it at some point, but basically, they released this big video where they're like, oh, we know we let people down with Unity. The game was broken on release. Like, we're working really hard to, like, make sure we're listening to the community and give players, like, something they want, right? Which is totally fair. Like, I get that. But one of the, like, little clips that they showed in that video is they were interviewing players and they were like, oh, movement like doesn't really do what I want it to do, and then they asked them a question. So like, if movement felt smoother, but you had like maybe a little less control, like would you enjoy the game more? And those players were saying yes, and they were like writing that down, which is like, I understand the intention, like you have a good heart, but like that's simply like the wrong way to go about it. Instead of
Comes from the wrong place. It comes from players who don't really know what AC movement used to be about.
Yeah, and I mean it doesn't even necessarily have to be that. Like I totally get why players would react that way, but like you as a developer do kind of have a responsibility, I feel like, to understand that feedback for what it is, which is not,
Indefinitely.
you don't just take it at face value where it's like players want less control and like a smoother, like less like, obtrusive system. Like take it as we're not teaching players how to move the way they want to, right? Like we're
This is a lesson they've failed to learn, like
since like AC1.
AC3 or
Yeah.
AC1 as well. Yeah.
Honestly, yeah.
AC3 was the first start of things getting streamlined in a way that actively hurt the experience.
Hmm.
Oh man, the what AC3 does with ledge grabs is unforgivable.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. And I mean even something as simple as like the example I always bring up is when I first played AC3, I was so excited to read like the little in-game Rebecca's Animus patch notes, right? Where she's like, "Oh, I patched the Animus to like do this and that." I'm like, first of all, that's so cool. Thank you for like giving me patch notes on your OS like in universe. That's badass, right? Like,
I had no clue that was like a thing as well. That's really cool.
yeah. And so one of the things Rebecca mentions is you can now decide like whether safe jump or unsafe jump is the thing you want to do. You can just hold R1 or high profile, and well, I mean high profile is not really a thing in AC3 anymore, but just go with it. Like it's kind of a thing, but it's not really a thing.
I call it private fucking high profile.
Same, yeah. But it's like you can just hold high profile, and if you are about to jump off of something that you take damage from, then Connor won't do it. Right? And then if you want to jump, you would like tap out, legs or jump with it. Which is like, at first I saw that and I was like, wow, that's really cool. But then the first corner, then the first corner I turned came up and Connor ran up the wall when I was not holding legs, and I was like, oh.
They could have made it, they could have done it so that, jumps are enabled with high profile, but wall runs aren't. But no.
Yeah, it's just interesting. The translation of intent into gameplay is our next topic, and I think it slots in pretty smoothly here, since we were just talking about stuff like that. Why don't you give us your kind of just overview of this concept?
Right. So what I mean by translation of intent into gameplay is that when you expect to do something, when you wish to do something, when you wish to pull off an action or, trigger part of your move set, you want to get from one place to another with a single control, a single bind. You want to jump, you want to eject, you want to swing, you want to vault. You tell the game to do it, and it does it, and it does it whenever you told it so.
Mm-hmm.
So into this, come in the concepts of cancelability and omnidirectionality and just general every single aspect of these games that adds to freedom also adds to your ability to translate intent into gameplay. Of course, for that you also assume that you have proper targeting systems so that it's not Unity, or that you're gonna actually have an eject trigger once you press the button and not be told no. It also assumes that if you tell the game to do something unsafe, the game assumes you wanted to do it.
Like it respects your decision instead of trying to
Respects
like
your
protect
decision and
you.
lets you do something that would potentially end up in fall damage, because the moment AC started holding your hand and being safer, it didn't only make for an automation of something that you would never do. It didn't simply stop you from things that you would never want to do. It started locking you out of genuine like
Useful
combos and
options.
different interactions that you can, yeah, that you can employ,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to safe jumps. I mean, in Unity, for example, you can't do an unsafe side eject, right?
No,
You
no,
can
you
only
can't.
eject onto context.
Yeah.
And the problem is, okay, if Unity had a proper ledge grab, what could I do with this eject? I could eject to the side unsafely and then re-grab the wall and then get somewhere from there.
Yeah.
What does Unity let you do? Nothing. It doesn't. It
Yeah,
just doesn't let you
because
do
you
it.
can't do the action in the first place.
Yep. And another piece of like feeling like your intent is translated into gameplay is simply being able to trust that what you're telling the game to do is going to be reliable, consistent, and that it's going to, act the same every single time you approach a certain context.
Yeah.
Consistent jump distances, consistent eject distances, knowing when you're going to end up in a hang versus where you're going to, like when you're going to end up in a foot landing. All of this is really important,
Mm-hmm.
at least to me.
I think an interesting kind of like note on that is when you think about like AC1 to Rev, for example, like the first four games, when if you're just holding auto parkour and you're like pathing through object chains, the distance of jumps, is kind of based on whatever is in front of you, right? Like whatever you're about to like path into. But when you tap out a manual jump when you're on the ground or like a flat surface or a rooftop, your jump distance is always the same.
Yeah, it's a
And
baseline
so
jump distance that you can trust.
yeah, exactly. And so basically you have these moments where you're like, I can kind of like a lot of AC Wonder Rev movement is you're loosely like bound to this kind of like grid, right?
Yeah.
But you can break out of that grid in any angle, in any direction, at any time you want with like a manual jump input.
And the game respects your
And it
wish to
respect
do so.
it lets you do it. And then from that, because you have catch ledge, that's kind of like the other part of the sandwich, where it's like first I can jump in any direction anytime I want, and then once I've done that, I can, finish my sentence, so to speak, by regrabbing something, in proximity. And so it's such a simple equation, it's just like 1 + 1 = 2. But when you combine it together and you layer it on top of like the grid movement, it's like really, really versatile. Like there's a lot of like ways you can kind of just approach situations, and obviously it ties into stealth and combat as well. Like these aren't just movement games, they just happen to place a premium on movement in the sense that being good at movement in AC used to make it so that you were like you were in a way better position to take advantage of like every other system,
And you were way
basically.
faster, and it just played directly into the fantasy of being an assassin. Because an assassin is someone who's, by definition, well, the traditional idea of an assassin, the hooded guy with
Yeah.
a hidden blade, the field operative.
Yeah.
You expect them to be good at parkour.
Yeah, you
You
do.
expect them to be able to consistently do what they wish to do.
Mm-hmm.
And once you can kind of immerse yourself into that as the player and play the game and translate your intent into an action, reliably so, it feeds into the fantasy, makes you feel like the assassin.
Yeah. And what was really cool about like the classic games as well, and I bring this up every time, is it also tied into the philosophy of Brotherhood Assassins. So, like the whole leap of faith thing, the whole thinking for yourself thing, nothing is true, everything is permitted. All of that
Oh,
is
yeah.
actually expressed in parkour because when you're a new player, you're maybe unsure of yourself, you're not very confident, right? You
Yeah.
maybe don't understand that nothing is true and everything is permitted. So you just kind of hold high profile and legs, and you're auto pathing through object chains and you're having a good time. But then when you start realizing, like nothing is true and everything is permitted, like I can eject here. Like yes, it's unsafe. If I mess it up, I'll kill myself and desynchronize, but I can do it and then I can catch ledge. And now I'm doing things that, people bound to like the loose grid system, like they're not accessing, they're not doing. You're doing things that like the guards can't do, because guards can do basic movement in
Yeah.
classic AC. Like that's how they can chase you and stuff. They can't climb vertical surfaces, but they can do jumps and they can pull up onto
Or
objects.
they can't eject, for example, so that already, gives you a
Yeah,
significant advantage.
yeah, and I thought that was something that was really interesting. The better you get at like freeing your mind, the more of a leg up you have over your enemies, which is literally like the definition of a Brotherhood assassin, like
It's
philosophically.
the creed.
Yeah, it's literally the Assassin's Creed.
And I think movement in AC, why movement is so strong in AC, and why it makes a good AC game is because parkour is always bound to be the one branch of AC gameplay that can most closely resonate with the creed. You're breaking free of the constructs that surround you, of the streets below you, of the object chains around you. You're applying the fact that nothing is true, nothing that you see is necessarily keeping you boxed in.
Yeah.
Everything is permitted, which means you can break out of these, and the only thing is to make it count. You have to, as Ezio said one day, that one very wise man called Ezio said that you have to hold and deal with the consequences of what you've done.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what parkour was. If you fucked up, you fucked up. If you
Yeah.
made it, you made it.
And that's how players would get that adrenaline rush where it's like I can do this ego strike. I can jump across this street. I know I can grab this. I know I can catch ledge to save myself, right? Even though if I mess up the timing like 1 second late, I would desync there. Right? Like
Yep,
that's what that meant. Like the consequences of our actions, be they glorious or tragic, right? Like
absolutely.
I love that. I love that about parkour and movement. And I think that's something I really do miss about the games. And to some extent it is like a bit of community like gospel, as it were, that like that is how we've like interpreted them over the years. But I don't think it's an accident necessarily. I think that the way the game systems and narrative like intertwined were certainly a lot more like intimate and a lot closer to each other back in the day than they are now.
Absolutely. There's a lot that, I mean, even if the devs never literally said, okay, parkour is going to be the main and most, like, the strongest representation of the creed, the context in which they were working, the philosophies that they applied, even if they weren't directly applied to parkour, ended up leading to this.
Mm-hmm.
They knew they were working on an Assassin's Creed game. They applied the creed and its principles to the protagonists of the time and made them play that way consequently.
Yeah, and it's even in every system. Like combat in AC1 follows the same principles. Where when you're new, when you're unsure of yourself, you're probably going to use your sword most of the time because sword is very easy to counter with. It does pretty good
Yep.
damage. It has good guard. You can like block with it for a long time, right? But then as you get really, really good and very confident, as you realize nothing is true and everything is permitted, like what's the strongest weapon in AC1 but the hardest one to use? It's the hidden blade, right? And
Ooh, the
like
hidden blade and shock and awe chain.
yeah, shock and awe chains. Now you're not even like you're fighting like not even by doing combat. You're just like assassinating people. Like what? Like that's not fighting, right? Like but nothing is true and everything is permitted. Other video games tell you that when you're fighting a final boss, like you have to abide by the fact that he has tons of health and like goes through all these phases, but
Yep.
nothing is true and everything is permitted. If you counter kill the true Al Mualim, you just skip the entire fight because you use your hidden blade and you just kill him
I
instantly.
love that so much. I fucking love that they just explicitly just allowed you to do so.
Yeah,
I love it.
and it just makes so much sense. Like it's one of those things where the game simply just operates by its rules, right? Like
Yep.
I love stuff like that. Like I think those create these moments of like ludic poetry almost, like which
Yep.
is just amazing, and it's something I've always loved.
I think one other important thing to mention, and this feeds more into the point of why do we love this parkour in this system, is also the fact that it just systemically lets you do everything that is within the sort of universal capability of an assassin. Maybe it's not realistic, but it's grounded in what an assassin can and should do,
Yeah,
and it spans very wide. Maybe, in real life, you're not going to make a height gaining foot landing side eject most of the time.
yeah,
Like 99% of the time, you just don't have the conditions to do so, but it makes sense for an assassin to push slightly above the bar of a normal human
yeah. That's what
and to
makes them
like give you this
assassins.
freedom. And this freedom expands into such a wide and functional move set that you can just do just about anything. Everything is permitted.
Yeah, everything is permitted. It's awesome. I love it so much. It's something I sorely miss. Yeah.
So do I, man.
I think now may be a good time to, mention a little bit about mods and how, mods don't like fix classic AC movement. now that we've actually mentioned like a decent amount of, an overview, like why is it good, why do we like it, what are the ways that it works, what can you expect from it?
So, the best thing about the mods is that they focus on the idea of telling the game to do something and having it be done.
Yeah.
And they give you ultimate control. Of course, there's edge cases and there's some things that won't perfectly work because the mod does miracles by poking into memory or different instructions and either skipping them or giving them different values. But the fact that you can choose, hey, that jump there that would land on feet, I want to land that on a hang. Can I swing off of it? I can. Did I just dive beam? You can swing off of it. Is there a parkour down destination? I can reach it. Do I want to completely disable targeting? Do I want to completely disable context tracking, hold freeform, and every other move that you're executing is going to target freeform?
Right.
Do you want a vault to exit without targeting anything? Hold freeform in the middle of the vault. Do you want to swing into nothing even though there's a beam in front of you? Hold freeform while you're swinging. Do you want to not target anything but go downwards? Hold freeform and parkour down as the modifiers during any action, and that's what's going to happen.
And what I love about it is like all of these things are literally just an extension of the movement philosophy of the base games, like in classic AC. Like functionally what you're doing is you're holding a state, right? Like you're holding a state or like a state modifier, and then your moves are abiding by that state modifier, which is literally how high profile and low profile like work to begin with. Like it's so if you already, I think that is why it's really important to learn how to play modless, because the mod is an extension of that like profile system.
It's like if high profile was what it is, it's like the high profile. You
Yeah.
have different toggles for different states that you used to only toggle through high profile in vanilla, and it just does its thing. It is what you mentioned is very important because you have to really know what the mod does and how it does things, and to do so, you need to appreciate what these games did before the mod.
Yeah.
So I think learning how to properly read the environment, how to properly use ejects that the game already has, and use manual jumps and different, perhaps unintended mechanics like punch drops, really builds up how much you truly appreciate the mod later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it opens up your eyes to, okay, I wasn't able to do this before. Now I can do it whenever I want to. And the feeling, the reward of it, and once you actually pull it off in a literal sense, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I
And
think
it's also,
go on.
sorry, keep going.
No, you go.
So I think this also applies to the mod itself. So, when you're getting into it, there's like 30 different things you can do, and
Yeah.
in basically any context.
I'm like, what's a fent drop?
Oh, oh, we gotta get into that.
We
The fence
later.
drop.
Later. I'm so scared.
Oh, you have no clue. Okay, so with the mod, it's really important to learn things gradually
Hmm.
because you're otherwise just going to be very overwhelmed and not really start reading the different contexts in which you can apply things. One great advantage I had in learning the mod was the fact that I was basically there with Henry throughout the entire process of him implementing either his own features or features that Random came up with. Random COG, love him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was kind of forced to gradually apply these different functions because they simply didn't exist. The rest of the moveset wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah. Like you were learning them as they were emerging.
Yeah. And even though keybinds were changing constantly because we were kind of experimenting with things, that did make things harder. But then again, you learned how to properly apply everything that the mod had prior to like an update or like a feature extension, and then learn to really appreciate what the mod adds later. And you already had all of that, like all of the knowledge, all of the muscle memory from what came before, and now can simply expand on it in like a very gradual manner.
Yeah. I feel like the worst thing a player could do is install a classic AC game. They're not really like super great at movement yet. They haven't really like done their due diligence, kind of like learning base parkour, and then they install the mod, and then like they try to learn both base movement and modded movement at the same time. I would not do that. I think that would just give you a bad experience, and
Absolutely.
you probably won't even enjoy the game. If you have that foundation, you'll actually be able to like understand what you're doing and what you now have access to.
Yeah. you get used to applying what you know from before and like slowly building up different connections mentally to different parts that you learned previously to different like methods that you applied and kind of thinking through them in more depth if you're doing things gradually. There's
Mm-hmm.
only one reason for why a beginner would want to install the mod, and it's for the actual parts that the mod kind of acts as fixes. So, for example, the mod completely disables stumble landings. You
Right.
know, the stupid, annoying Ezio stumbles,
Yeah.
they're gone.
Yeah.
And the best thing is the AC1 stumble remains. So if you barely make it to something, it kind of stays. I think a recent update might have kind of changed that because of some other functionality, but that was very interesting to realize.
Yeah, I think that's pretty huge because like that is definitely something people are rightfully irritated with. Like Ezio definitely stumbles on
Absolutely.
things way more than Altair does at base. You know, he has those moments where like you land on something and it's just like, why did I slip off of that? Like there's no reason to slip off of that. You're crazy, right?
And it's
Like
even worse than it seems because it's a function that's appended on top of what Altair was already doing, it seems. So they just gave you a function that even if you're heading towards a predetermined parkour target, we call this a prescriptive move. So anything that prescriptively targets something, some piece of context or an object,
right, like a beam,
this
a
stumble
ledge.
is ever present whenever you're in the air, even though you're targeting something and already know you're landing there.
That honestly explains why it happens so much, and especially in those like
Yeah.
diagonal jumps, right? Like
That's a whole different stumble as well. Oh boy. So you know, if you're like in a freeform fall
yeah,
or in a freeform piece of airtime, and there's like a beam in your proximity, you're kind of gonna snap onto it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
In AC1, it's only running if you're in a freeform airtime state. It doesn't run if you're in a prescriptive state and heading towards something. For some reason, in the Ezio games, they made it so it's completely always on. So if
yeah.
you're making
Like
a diagonal jump towards a beam, the game, like Ezio's heading for it, he's gonna land on it. He's has his animation paired. He is going towards that exact aimed point, and for some reason, the collision box is still reading context and telling the game, "Hey, that's a beam there. You should snap to it." So you're basically snapping onto the same thing that you were gonna land on anyway, or in some worse context, you're snapping onto stuff that you jumped off from.
you know, some players probably like don't even realize that they're noticing it. If you play, especially like one of the Ezio games, like immediately after AC1, it becomes very apparent that that's happening, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
contributes to Ezio feeling a lot more like Ezio feels faster than Altair. But Ezio also feels more volatile than Altair, and like that is a big part of the reason why.
One thing that makes Ezio definitively faster is the fact that he can start wall runs right after doing any prescriptive landing.
Yes,
So
yes.
you're landing either on the outer or inner edge of a platform or an NSO. You can instantly initiate a wall run. With Altair, that's so it's painful. It's so
Yeah, Altair does have to like play out his like landing animation like kind of fully, whereas Ezio like he basically just like cuts out the frames if you're in position to like start the next animation, which is
yep.
quite cool.
One pro tip for all AC1 enjoyers, you included, Leo. The most reliable way to start wall runs in AC1 is to start them with legs and then hold high profile. It simply disables like the possibility of holding high profile for that split second before pressing legs, where Altair kind of looks for context to kind of hop off of the NSO, hang on like a handhold that's close to it.
Yeah.
So if you're holding legs and then pressing high profile, you're instantly inputting the wall run bind without necessarily telling him, "Hey, jump off of the beam first."
You know what's interesting is that's actually also how I leap of faith in AC1. Like I always hold legs first and then high profile off of the beam.
Oh, interesting. Fair, fair.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure like why, it just feels better. Like at some point I just figured out that like this feels like better to do.
It just feels safer because AC1 does the mistake of making certain contexts feel more volatile with high profile than legs, even though legs are an extension of high profile and should be more volatile than just holding high profile.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's why we kind of built up that sort of muscle memory, because I think I do a similar thing in some contexts.
Yeah, makes sense. The reputation of AC movement and how fragile it is, and the way people look at it online across the series and across not so much engines but across frameworks. You know, like AC1 to Rev, AC3 to Rogue, Unity to Syndicate, Origins to Mirage.
Yeah. Oh, where do I even start?
Because there's a lot to talk about with this one, and there's a lot of like damage to address in this one.
I think I have something that puts things into perspective.
Okay.
We always talk about how RPG fans sometimes prefer RPG movement because they don't necessarily know how well the games from before played, and they think they prefer it when they would genuinely prefer what they didn't really try out because of that reason.
Yeah.
Or Unity fans, for example. But it's not just them. Most classic fans, most classic AC fans and players who have ever played these games in their life, who love these games for their own experience of them, never truly found out how good they are.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Classic players have not really fully delved into the experience that they already love so much. And that's saddening. It makes me
It
so
is.
sad.
It is. It's saddening and it's also like logical. Like it makes sense because we were discussing before how like the games never really did a great job of surfacing information to the player. They never did a good job of teaching themselves to the player. And I wouldn't even say like modern AC is much better at teaching itself to the player.
It's
It
not.
it's
There's just less to teach.
exactly, there's just less to teach. And so like by contrast, it's teaching more of its total game, but there's still a lot of things that it leaves out, and it still commits like the sin of not teaching whatever it has like the most complexity weight. Like classic AC didn't really do a great job of teaching you movement nuance, but like how do runes in Valhalla work? Nobody knows until people did testing and they realized some of them literally do nothing. Things like that. How does itemization in Odyssey work? The game is not going to teach you that. You have to look for build videos online, like really smart people like it's Jordan does, to like explain to you this is how build crafting works in Odyssey. Odyssey is actually a fairly like good build game. Like it's actually, that's one of the things that it does pretty well. Like
Which is insane to me. Like, damn, bro.
yeah, that is certainly quite the paradigm shift. Like, but I think it's really instructive and really amusing to consider that even though Odyssey has quite good build crafting, it doesn't do anything to teach you how it actually works and like what you would want to go for. Like, it doesn't really
Hate this about AC, man.
like it, and it's always the same. It barely does anything. I think ironically, like Mirage is probably one of the better games at like teaching itself to the player.
Unironically, yeah.
Yeah.
AC has this perpetual issue of making good systems and good games and then not showing people how good they are in fear of them not being able to play them. It treats players like idiots so damn often.
It really does. It really does. I think like Assassin's Creed players are smarter than the games seem to give
Absolutely.
them credit for.
This is exactly why I think that tutorialization in the old schools is the main reason that shit went downhill. People are like, hey, the game doesn't need you to eject, so no one would care.
So I'm not gonna
No,
do it.
people
Yeah.
bought an AC to get immersed into the fantasy. If you tell them you can use this move to make your parkour better, you're telling them you can use this move to make the fantasy better and more fun.
Yeah.
There's so much intrinsic motivation in these games, and all you need to do is teach people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's exactly why I think, hey, if these games had better tutorialization and retained every other bit of their like design philosophy and level design philosophy, people would use ejects properly and would employ them still because it feeds into being a good assassin.
Yeah, yeah. You get to experience more of the game that you bought, that you invested your money and your time and your passion into. I think that's a really good point. It's really interesting. And when you look at other games, they don't really shy away from this kind of complexity and this kind of difficulty. Like I wouldn't really call like the Arkham games like easy games, like when you're first learning how to play an Arkham game, like moving around feels kind of clunky, I'm not gonna lie, like until you figure it out. Like sneaking around, like it's actually very easy to get caught and just like riddled with bullets from guys in a room, right? Like it's very easy
Yeah.
to fail in Arkham games, and yet the games don't really become easier as time goes on. In fact, like it's actually quite the opposite. Like they retain their systems, and in a lot of ways, like they become harder. Like I think Arkham Knight has some of the hardest stealth in the series. You have stuff like fear takedowns. You have these crazy tools that make you wildly overpowered compared to like, Asylum or City. It's just crazy that, it keeps layering on more. It adds more. It expects more of the player, and it doesn't treat it as a bad thing. It treats it as like
And
you.
it iterates.
Yeah, it iterates. Like you want to be Batman, right? Well, this is the stuff Batman faced, and it knows that like by giving the player this to chew on, it enhances the experience of being this character. That's something I just wish Assassin's Creed did more of.
And the problem is, it does it halfway through the lens of the devs themselves. There's this insane amount of dissonance between what the devs are trying to do and the systems they're like making synergize in the games. and then how they're marketed, how they're thought, how they're directed, how they're presented. Like having proper eject optimization and a proper wide move set and all of that was not an accident.
No,
They
definitely
knew
not.
what they were doing. They knew what they were building. They knew the level design was gonna need them, and they made it, engaging. They made it deep. They made you need to like properly employ the move set at hand if you want to efficiently move like an assassin, or
Yeah.
to be expressive. You don't necessarily always need to go for efficiency.
It makes sense, especially through the lens of Prince of Persia, because AC1 was originally
Yes.
intended to be a Prince of Persia game. And like, if you play Sands of Time, Warrior Within Two Thrones, like immediately before AC1, like Prince of Persia has back ejects. You can do them basically anytime,
Yep.
right? And like, immediately that just
It's no accident.
it's not an accident. Like this is it's a very important move. It's an intentional move, and in the Prince of Persia games, you even have to use them. In an open world setting, you're not going to be forced to use certain movements because that's the nature of an open world. Like it gives you more freedom, but
Yep.
as a result, like one of the consequences of that is that they have to let go of that kind of like very very tight direction. Like you cannot beat a Prince of Persia game without back ejecting because like you will encounter a situation where like you simply cannot progress unless you do that because it's a linear game. But in Assassin's Creed games, you can ignore a lot of systems and a lot of mechanics, to lesser or greater extents, and still finish the game and still roll credits because that's the nature of an open world. And the only exception to that is in tombs. Tombs are linear spaces, so like they have that like control, they have that direction where they're like, look, you have to do this. And lo and behold, that's like the only time a great portion of players even ever do those moves because they don't remember that you can do it like in the open world context. And it's just heartbreaking. Like,
Let's not forget the AC2 flashback tower.
ah, yes, I love it.
Oh my god.
I love it so
When
much.
someone's like tired of me, they just send it to me to fend me off. Because it just instills so much trauma in me, knowing just how many people have watched that video and thought that that climb was the way to do it, when all it takes was an eject.
Yeah, I mean, you can also just like stand under the
Or
thing
manual
and
jump,
like
yeah.
manual jump straight up. But like I kind of get why people don't know that because there's almost never a reason to like
It's
vertical
even
jump.
more niche.
Yeah, it's even
It's
more
oddly
niche.
powerful though. You can do it in a good few contexts and actually get something from it.
Oh yeah, like it's an amazing move. It's just like, it's not what people usually think of. I think it's also interesting that that is something that doesn't exist anymore either. Unity took that away.
Yeah, that that as well. Yeah, and what Unity also took away as cancels, which you can employ in that video in that tower to get up there faster.
Yeah.
That's why I absolutely love Lynn Eileen for making that video on how to actually properly do it.
Yeah.
And I approached them and I like asked, "Hey, I'm gonna make a thumbnail for you."
Lynn Eileen
And I
is
made this
great.
dramatic ass thumbnail where like Altair is standing in front of the tower looking up at its looming presence, and that fucking balcony just kind of highlighted. Oh man.
Amazing. I love it so much. But yeah, yeah, I think the reputation of AC movement being so like not necessarily accurate online is part of the reason why people have this assumption as well that like, hey, this mod like fixes classic parkour, right? And it's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I think it's really important to like, I think at some point somebody should make a video where they just kind of overview each movement paradigm, where it's like, this is the
Mm-hmm.
general stuff that you can do in AC1 to Rev. This is the general stuff that you can do in AC3 to Rogue. This is the general stuff you can do in Unity to Syndicate, the general stuff you can do in Origins to Mirage. And then, of
Yep.
course, like inside each of those games, there are nuances and there are tweaks. Like, I mean, from Unity to Syndicate, like, is already huge. Like, you fell off energy, where it's like, why did we lose so much tech? Like, when we already had so little of it remaining. But
Yep.
even still, like, I feel like if a video like that existed where it was just presented without judgment, right, without saying like this is good, this is bad, just like outlining this is what's possible and like what is no longer possible, I think that would be really interesting. And in fact, it's so interesting I might even consider doing it myself. Like,
Absolutely do so. Though I have one thing to interject. There's a high chance this is what makes the fight against misinformation when it comes to old school parkour really hard. It's the fact that people aren't instantly going to make the right conclusions when they see a move. If you, for example, make a list of moves that you can do in the old school ACs and compare it to Unity, some person watching it is going to see a side eject in AC2, a side eject in Unity. The Unity one looks prettier, therefore it's still better. You know?
That just
So they
crushes me.
sweep the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something that has always bothered me, where people see something that has like, I mean, that's why my Twitch chat has the Arno do pretty twirl meme, right?
That's why I used it in my Unity slander video.
Yeah, like Arno do pretty twirl, therefore the movement is better, right? Like, okay.
Yep. And the problem is, that's why I think that proper choreo, even though, choreo is not necessarily the most sincere form of showing gameplay, because if something didn't work in it, you wouldn't necessarily, you would be able to, hide it. You would be able to route around it. But what choreo does is that it contextualizes all of these moves and shows players, hey, these games can be fast, flowy, practical, and functional, and they're controllable. And that's partly like the entire point of my channel to begin with. It's like, hey, this is what these games can do. And maybe choreos, exploit something that's a bit more situational. Maybe they, maybe choreos can sometimes end up being a bit more stylish than what you would do in day-to-day gameplay. But what matters is that every single move showcased there, or almost every single move showcased in a choreography video, is something you can do once you boot up the game reliably.
There's this meme of like, oh, AC choreography videos, like people just doing all these like unnecessary and superfluous movements. I think that is what separates a really good choreo from like just good choreo.
Oh, I was gonna get into that.
Yeah.
One thing is, so a choreo can be done for basically any purpose. It can be done to show off something practical. It can be done to show off how quickly you can make your way through like a specific part of it. It can be done to simply flex around and do flashy shit.
Yeah.
All of those, if they're played by a skilled player, you can tell they know what they're doing. They're putting their intent onto paper and it's sticking.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I'm not actually just like shitting on people who do things like just to be flashy, because as you said, like if someone is really good, I can tell when that's like what they're going for, right? Like I can watch the video and I can see like this player isn't doing this to get from point A to point B. This player is doing this to showcase like this is just how quickly I can parse environments.
Yep.
Right, because like that, it's literally just like an exhibition.
And this is, I mean, every single choreo, of course, is gonna express a bit of style and how people personally play the game and what they think looks cool. They're also made to look cool. But this is something that I do with my choreos, where I try to make them look cool and fun, but keep a sense of speed, a sense of flow, and a sense of purpose. Make it look like that is something the assassin you're playing would actually do.
Yeah, I love that.
So of course, this is the concept I call apparent functionality. I mean, it's self-explanatory. It's functionality that's apparent, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're lying.
Yeah.
Even if you do a move and you do a detour, for example, let's say there's a very long rooftop, right? There's 5 seconds of running across it. You don't want to run for 5 seconds. It's not engaging. It's not fun to watch. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna look to the street, to the side of that rooftop. You're gonna see if there's any objects on it, and you're gonna go there. Was going there faster than just running across it? No. But even if you go down there and do some really nicely optimized stuff and show off your knowledge, your skill, and how to optimize something, you're still teaching the viewer, hey, you can do this in such situations. You can pull off this move in this context to get there faster. And even though the run is overall slower, you still added something to it in a practical sense.
Yeah, and what I think is really interesting about that, especially in the classic games, which is not the case in Unity, and you're going to very quickly understand why, is because in those classic games, yeah, maybe like running across the roof straight would be faster. But one thing to consider is that you actually can't always do that. Why? Because sometimes there can be archers there. So you maybe not in the choreo, maybe not in the video, but knowing how to access, object chains on building facades or like the sides of walls is really important, because there are situations where maybe you have to chase a target or tail a guard. Maybe you want to like get across a restricted area. You can't just run straight across a roof because archers will hear you and turn around and see you, right? Like, so being able to do that, like does actually have practical value, does actually have purpose and usefulness.
And I think like this kind of expands on the entire discussion about how useful is parkour really if you can just run through a street.
Yeah.
And I'd say it's still extremely fucking useful, not just because of roof guards. They're definitely an important part of your like flow and routing, but it also comes down to parkour not only being a tool for going from point A to point B, as in going from one side of the town to another. That's something that streets are obviously optimized for, but it's also about being very quick on the local scale,
Yeah.
about making your way quickly through different verticality layers and different pieces of geometry to navigate not only archer sightlines, but hey, now you're in a stealth mission. What are you gonna do? There's a guard looking down like some sort of like rooftop that you could run by. Find
Exactly.
another way, and you use parkour to get there.
Yeah,
So it's faster to use
because
parkour to get to the guard instead of getting seen by the guard by running down the quote unquote faster,
yes.
uh,
Yes.
version.
Yeah, I think what we're getting at is that like that's why parkour is so powerful in the classic games is because
Yeah.
the actions you can do are like always the same, but the context you're gonna do them under are not. Sometimes you don't want to, like, yes, running across the roof is pretty fast. Yes, running on street level is pretty fast, but there are straight up times where you cannot do that because like the design of the memory like doesn't let you, right? And then even when you can, there are situations where you might still choose not to because when a player gets really good at movement, you're able to autopilot like more in a way that you can't on street
Yep.
level. Street level has a lot of like visual noise and even like audio noise that can sometimes mess with your mental stack and like disrupt your thinking.
True. True.
And a lot of times, like what you'll see really good AC players do is like they'll use parkour along, building walls and facades and object chains on the sides of buildings because that lets them not think about it, so that they can still track a target, so that they can think about their tools, so that they can like plan ahead. Because that's kind of the thing that like makes movement have the kind of skill expression and skill gap that it has is that you're constantly in flux and you're constantly in this tension between doing things like fully manually and like letting it kind of just chill in the back of your mind, right? Like, and I think that's something that you're not really going to think about unless you're already kind of like intermediate to advanced, like, but it's very real. Like a lot of and some players probably don't even realize that they do it, and as soon as they heard me mention it just now, they're like, oh yeah, I do that all the time, where like you'll
I do
do,
that all the time
yeah,
as
like
well.
same. Like I'll do parkour because I'm like I know I don't have to think about this. I don't have to gentle push past these people. I don't have to like avoid accidentally like bumping into dudes or like going through the stall. Like I can just go on the side of this building and then for the next 5 seconds, my mind is free to think about how much ammo I have. To think about is this target going to reach this door.
There's a more raw benefit to using parkour than simply this meta aspect of hey, I can like think about other things more
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not really down on the streets. And it's the fact that if we're thinking about longer relations, AC cities are built in a way that's meant to be a bit confusing, so that they feel bigger, they feel grander, and more random. To get from point A to point B on a pretty long relation, you need to know those streets if you actually want to make a speed benefit from them, because if you take a wrong turn and find a dead end, it's over. Maybe if I found out the complete perfect like street side route to get to my fucking destination, that would be faster.
Yeah, it
But
would
with
be
parkour, I can
theoretically
get up on these
faster.
rooftops and I'm there,
Yeah.
and it's faster practically.
Yeah, it's also it fits thematically as well because that is kind of like, you know, people look at birds in real life, right? And they're like a bird you
Yeah.
can just travel in a straight line like to its next destination, whereas people on the street have to like turn left, turn right, go around corners, go through alleyways, right? Like and the assassins are bird themed and bird aspected, right? And so that's kind of the thing where like
Yeah.
you're flying over the city in a straight line. It's really really handy.
It's really fun to also just solve problems with parkour, even if like the environment is generally challenging for it. Even if you have to fish out some insane optimizations to really make a benefit from movement compared to running, once you do it, you still did it faster. You still accomplished something by using its core system, and it feels amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Mods do not add ejects. I feel like this is a topic that I was deciding whether to bring up or not, but I was genuinely like flabbergasted when you said it to me. Apparently,
Yeah.
some people have this idea that you know this definitive AC parkour mod adds ejects, and like I just don't even know. what to say to that.
So it's true that it can alter ejects. It does more with ejects than was previously possible, and it can make them stronger if you abuse it.
Of
But again,
course.
if I see someone abusing it, as I said, I will find them. Um, so the thing is, I think this stems mostly from people who don't necessarily know a lot about AC movement, not only about old school AC movement, but AC movement in general.
Yeah.
Because even if you're like proficient at Unity, you'll see, okay, that's an eject. The old schools maybe have it.
Yeah.
And it's the problem is, right, okay, this person maybe doesn't play AC games. Maybe it doesn't matter if you tell them, hey, this is different, but they still have a crucial role in spreading the image of AC parkour. And
Yeah. Yeah.
if they perpetuate the wrong image, it's going to eventually make its way to someone who later has some sort of influence on the community or is just planning to play the games. And then they're going to think wrong. They're going to think something that absolutely isn't true. So I don't necessarily think that whoever's watching this necessarily thinks that ejects don't exist in the old schools. I think most people watching this would actually, know that.
I would
But
assume
just to
so.
be
Yeah.
clear, the old schools had ejects, and those were the best ejects in the franchise already.
Yeah.
Period.
Do you want to talk briefly about like skill growth in classic AC versus the Unity era versus modern AC, and like what skill growth kind of looks like, and how the process of improving in each of these paradigms kind of like goes?
Absolutely. So how do you learn how to move properly in the old school games? You gradually, as we previously mentioned, you gradually learn your move set, and you start realizing what you can do with it.
Hmm.
You start applying it through your muscle memory. You start learning how to read the environment, and I can rely on these moves. I can pull them off, and you start seeing contexts in which they work.
Yeah.
In Unity, you learn moves, and then you have to learn contexts in which they won't work because the game said no.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to learn what not to do instead of expanding what you know and learning what you can do. In Unity, every single thing you learn, every single mechanic you find out about, every single thing you try to apply has 7 different problems, 7 different caveats that you have to navigate around in normal, just moment to moment gameplay.
Yeah. So like to some extent, like there is still a lot of like skill involved in that.
Absolutely.
It's just like it's basically like I call them compensations, but like there's still like an aspect in classic AC of like knowing what not to do or like when not
Yeah.
to do certain things. And that's one of the first things people learn, where it's like maybe don't hold all your buttons down the whole time, right? Like, and then you'll stop flinging yourself off edges and you'll stop all while running up walls that you don't want to.
Yep.
But this aspect of compensating for inopportune context or just like avoiding volatility in Unity feels like ever present. Like you have to constantly be on the lookout for it almost.
Or you sometimes want volatility and you don't get it back.
You don't get it back, yeah.
It just doesn't let you do something. And that's why, learning what not to do in the old schools is an organic process. You learn what your moves can do, therefore you know what sort of organic and natural results will lead to your death or to you failing like a parkour run. In Unity, you want to do something that was possible in the games before it, and it just doesn't.
Okay.
Even though it did it five jumps ago.
Yeah. So I have something kind of like an interesting way to sort of discuss this and go about this. So, being as kind and as charitable to each paradigm as possible, we're going to start from modern AC, like Origins to Mirage, and then we're going to go backwards, like all the way back to AC1 to Rev. And we're just going to be like, how do we learn movement, like in each of these games,
Yep.
like the most, the comfiest way possible, where how do we have people enjoy it the most? So I mean, my basic idea for Origins to Mirage is just I'm genuinely already struggling to like say something because it's
Yeah, there's like the fuck do I say? Maybe with Mirage you can say something.
with Mirage, yes, because it has like a density. It has the density to actually like compensations actually matter in Mirage very much, and one of the biggest ones is you have to kind of like leash yourself and hold yourself back from trying to do interactions on corners and diagonals. If you can like hold yourself back and restrain yourself from especially non-standing objects or NSOs in Mirage that
It's so annoying.
like are lead to a diagonal interaction, generally speaking, I would advise you avoid that as much as possible, and then you will have, typically a better time.
And that's generally like one of those inorganic kind of arbitrary like limitations that the game puts on you.
Mm-hmm.
Why shouldn't I be able to hop off of this Anasu at a 45-degree angle? Why do I have to wait for Boston to turn around? Why doesn't he want to descend from this? Why is he so sticky? And
Yeah.
this is something that's shared across all the RPGs. The advantage that Mirage has is that it's the density, of course, lets you kind of disengage from the object that you're stuck on a bit more easily because there's just more to jump to around you.
Yeah, basically, like, the RPG creates, like, movement is almost fully context based in a way that it really just hasn't been in previous
Yep.
titles. And so the reason why Mirage has an advantage is because due to the density of space, you're constantly surrounded by more contexts. So you can like snap to
Yep.
more things than
And
previous
you have
games.
ejects
Yeah,
in Mirage
which are quite
that
good.
work half the time.
Yeah.
Like when they work, they're genuinely like they look pretty, they feel nice. Once you like launch yourself across a building and land on feet, it's beautiful sometimes.
They're even
Not
pretty
even
functional
just
sometimes, yeah.
yeah. The problem is half the time you try to do them, they're not gonna work.
Yeah.
And you have to start learning, okay, that's one thing with Mirage that doesn't necessarily apply to the RPGs simply because Mirage has the possibility of useful ejects.
Yeah.
And it's you have to learn when a parkour down eject works, when a parkour up eject works, when you substitute a parkour up eject with a parkour down eject to gain height instead of lose it, and how to properly use climb cancels to maybe kind of get yourself into the more favorable context for ejecting.
Mm-hmm. So in that sense, like you can chew on Mirage movement a bit longer. It can be frustrating, especially like if you have a background
Yep.
in previous games, it will frustrate you. Like if you really want to stick with it and like get really good at it,
Yep.
it's definitely possible. I mean, players like Ropotopolous kind of do show that. Like you can
He's insane.
he's insane. Like you can do some very nice things with this movement, and it's even like decently practical in some missions. So.
And the way he makes it work and like utilizes it, and there's that very clear distinction of this is something he's doing for practicality versus this is something he's doing for style.
Oh yeah.
But you always know there's so much intent and meaning behind the moves.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think this video deserves a category called Ropotopolous is crazy.
Yes, yes, we're gonna make that topic. Ropotopolous is crazy. That's gonna be in the description. Just like last time's Animus Drifter is crazy.
Exactly, we're paying him back.
Yes. That's pretty much all there is to say, to be honest, just because there's not that many fail states to modern AC movement, which is a good and bad thing. It depends on what kind of player you are. I think that the nature of it generally feels pretty bad. I think that, I mean, comparing it to something like modern Spider-Man games, there's not really that many ways to fail movement in modern Spider-Man games, but nonetheless, there are still ways to be better at it and to make little micro optimizations, and you're
That's a
rewarded.
really good point.
Yeah, you're rewarded for your skill, you're rewarded for trying. Whereas in modern AC, like the reward you can like accrue and pull out for trying and for doing your best to like make those optimizations, it doesn't reach that high, and I think that's something that is fairly disappointing. It's something that I wish would change in this series going forward,
Yep.
where like even if you're going to protect players from themselves, even if you're going to, you know, be very handholdy, I do wish that there was still something to reach for and something to strive for, and I feel like that should be possible, you know.
I think this opens this opens a door to discussion about this misconception that I've seen around the place where people who don't necessarily know a lot about what the old schools can do simply think that we techies want to have more ways to fail because we need more skill for the sake of skill.
No, yeah, that's not the case. That's not
And
the
that's not the
case.
case.
Yeah.
The case is that we want to have fail states because these fail states, the openness to fail states often, allowed for certain crucial parts of the move set that you just don't have anymore. It let us do more.
Yeah.
We don't hate automation because it made something that we do easier. It made something that we used to do impossible.
Yeah, it made what we want to do impossible. And I think that's really important. Like, the reason we value fail states and value the ability to fail, like, it's actually a bit of a misnomer. We actually don't really care about the ability to fail that much. What we care about is that I think communicating this is very difficult, but the best way I can do it is like with this kind of thought process. So if I manual jump to my death, that's a fail state, right?
Yep.
But if I manual jump onto a nearby object or building, that's not a fail state. And yet the action I did stayed the same. It's the same action. That is what we care about. We don't care about like more ways to kill ourselves. Like that's not the important part. The important part is by denying us these ways to fail, you're also denying us useful actions that we could apply to so many contexts.
Failing by completely just shaving off an entire piece of functionality that the games had.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the games simply are not good enough at predicting what you want to do, therefore you need fail states. I guess you can make an argument for, hey, I want fail states because then I have a feeling of stakes in my movement. But
Yeah.
that is a very much secondary motivation
Yeah,
to
definitely
what you want
secondary.
fail states for.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely secondary. I mean, for some players, it's definitely valued, but I think that that comes after the pleasure of being able to transmit your intent, being able to do what you want to do. And then again, like the fail states, like they just emerge as a natural consequence of the game just letting me do things, right? And sometimes because it's letting me do things, the things I do have consequences. Like that's it.
Yep. We're not trying to be able to fail, we're trying to be able to do things.
Yeah, we don't want to make it harder for the sake of it being harder, which is why I always mention this thing that like some people love, some people hate, this concept of an Animus like assist mode where
I love it.
I think that's the best way to do it because it's like think about it, it literally just like you can play classic AC just by holding legs in a high profile. Like you can do that, right? And so there is no harm in disabling a lot of these like extra features that players like us make use of, like ejects, unsafe jumps, etc. Because most people don't even access those anyway. And the times that they do access them, they usually don't want to. And it like ruins their game. It makes them dislike movement, right? And so because that's the case, even from AC1, you can just do the same thing, but then have a mode like that you would select, just like your difficulty at the beginning of the game. Just have like the Animus handle some of your movement, right?
Yep.
And it would be diegetic. It would fit in universe as well, And then as you get more confident, as you like learn to control your being in the Animus more, you're able to access like your full moveset, and now you accept the consequences of having that control.
What the games should do is have 3 different modes. One, like just a complete assisted easy mode. I don't necessarily care about learning movement and I'm gonna help you mode. The second mode would be I want to learn movement gradually. Give me like the natural flow of how the assassin learns their moveset, if there's any sort of learning going on. Give me the full tutorialization, give me how to do things.
Yeah.
And then the third one would be I'm a veteran, I know what the fuck I'm doing, just give me the moveset.
Yeah, like I know how to use an Animus. Like unlock my full moveset like from sequence 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this also opens up to another discussion, which is this would counter this phenomenon in the AC community where people feel like they know far more than they do. ACs are so great at instilling a sense of authority and of knowledge,
And confidence, yeah. Like
and then they start stating outright falsehoods. And if there was a mode that told you, hey, this is the assisted mode, but you don't get the full movement experience, someone's gonna click on it and they're consciously gonna know, okay, there's more to the game.
yes, yes. I think
They're
that's
not gonna have this
huge.
confidence of saying, hey, this is bad when they outright haven't played it.
Yeah.
Because they know they haven't played the full experience.
Yeah. I think that would go a long way to just making a discussion online around the games mechanically like healthier, basically.
It would make it so much healthier because people would come into it being like, okay, I know I don't know everything. I want to teach. I want to like learn things. Teach me. Help
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Hopefully the game would be the thing that's actually teaching you.
Yeah.
But sometimes you simply need help from someone else or some advice.
It's pretty much impossible for any video game to teach you everything there is to know,
Yeah.
just because that's the nature of like interactive media. Like there's gonna be stuff that like even the devs didn't even know was possible, or tech that they just didn't envision people would do. Like I struggle to imagine that Black Flag and AC Unity developers like knew we would use Berserk to stun people, right? Like Berserk darts are just one of those things where it's yeah, like Berserk darts are just like their intended function is you make people go crazy and they attack each other, but because their detection state is like turned off for a few seconds, like we just use it as a stun. right? Like I don't know if that was like intentional, but that's how people use it, you know? I would say like really good players use the stun more than the berserk.
Yeah, that's something I like adopted very early on when I was playing Unity, and I found out about that exactly through your video.
Hmm.
So thanks for that.
It's really handy. It's such a good trick. Like if there's like a lone
Yeah.
guard, you just like blap, you know, you run up to him and shank him. It's so smooth.
Or you can use it as like a delay for 1-2s when you don't have any other ranged options and
Yeah,
stuff like that. It's so good. Like,
yeah,
you know, you berserk a dude on the other side of the room, you kill the two near you, and then the other one didn't see you, even though he was kind of facing you, and then you still have time to kill him.
yeah. Because what it
So good to pull it off, and it counters
exactly
smokes.
it does. And what's really cool is like what it resolves and the problem that it solves is quick shots don't always kill, right? It makes quick
Yep.
shots 100% reliable in a way that they otherwise wouldn't be, right?
Yep.
And I think that's one of those things where to me Unity was kind of the perfect middle ground between RPG vibe and like classic AC because
In
it
that sense, I agree.
yeah, like it had the RPG layer, so like you could spec into certain stuff. I could stand to see like the RPG stuff be more meaningful because I do think like I don't have an issue with how much you can ignore it, but I have an issue with kind of how useless it is. Like it's not really
Oh,
that
yeah.
rewarding to spec into certain things except for item capacity because like items are broken in
And
the
that's
entire
so
series.
broken.
Like the fact that I
How
can
many
just
smoke bombs can you have max?
I think like 12 or 15.
That's broken.
It
That's
it
cracked. You should have three max. That's
it's
my opinion.
it's a lot. I think Syndicate like maybe gives you 3 max if I remember. And
Maybe unless you can like upgrade.
yeah, and then like
But Syndicate has the thing where like the smoke bombs last so insanely long after an upgrade that it's
yeah,
basically like for the it's so long.
Syndicate smoke also goes through walls. Like
Oh yeah.
if you smoke on the other side of a wall, like it affects the guards on the other side, which I think is really interesting. I found that out in my no upgrades run, and I was like, oh okay,
That's so broken.
that's fine. Yeah, Mirage I think gives you 4, and Mirage smoke bombs don't last a while. And Mirage assassination animations like do take like a fair bit of time.
Oh, the fucking judo throw.
I know some players like don't like that, but I think honestly like it's a the way I have come to understand it is it's a balancing factor for how strong smoke is. Like
I that makes sense. Though I personally just prefer, you know, smokes being the balanced part instead of changing how assassinations feel, because then this starts peering into other facets of gameplay where, hey, I'm trying to kill this guy before the other guy comes back from rotation, but Basim's busy flipping a dead body over himself, you know?
yeah, yeah. No,
So yeah.
it's a tough call to make. Like I understand why they did it that way because it's a very like clean way to like have
Yeah.
those two systems like talk to each other in a way. Like um a great example is just like the ways you can choose to upgrade your smoke, right? So like one way is you can okay, so like you carry 4 smoke bombs in Mirage at base, right?
Hmm.
And I think one of the upgrades on the same row is you can either carry 6 smoke bombs or you can keep carrying 4 smoke bombs, but your smoke now lasts longer. And you have to choose
Yep.
between those.
Yep.
And so those kind of like indirectly fit either a stealth or combat oriented playstyle, where
True.
if you're more of a stealth player, you will value the longer lasting smoke, right? And then maybe you'll use focus to like gap close in. Like that gives assassin focus more value as well because by focusing into the cloud, you're not subjected to travel time. So like you
Mhm.
instantly get in, you can make use of the entire cloud's duration, right? So that's one thing. Um if you're more of a combat oriented player, you will use smoke more reactively, right? Or if you feel less confident in sneaking around, you know, if you get caught more, having 6 is a lot comfier than having 4 because now you can just drop one and then like shank everybody, right? Like
Mhm.
so you have more like opportunities to react to getting caught out. I think that's a really interesting decision. That's I think Mirage's tool design is actually
Yeah.
genius. I think Mirage has probably the best tools in the series, personally.
I also think so. I only have a critique when it comes to how the game feel is around them, because they often kill your momentum. They often cause you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
stop sprinting, and then you have to rebuild that momentum with that really slow acceleration. But in terms of what the tools can do and how they're introduced, like by themselves, I think they're also some of the best tools in the franchise.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's really interesting that like it's again something that they inherited from the RPG framework. Like there's no
Yeah.
when I went to Fan Expo to play Origins early, I was talking to people and I was like, you know, are quick shots in the game? And they're like, no, like we do not have quick shots anymore. You have to aim everything. And on the face of it, I was like, oh, that's really cool, you know, because like that means every time you use a tool, your player skill matters. Like you're able to miss, right? So like being good at hitting your shots actually matters finally. But then I was like, no quick shot means like
No flow.
no momentum. Yeah, like the way you move through environments like now is just not really so important anymore, which I guess makes sense when you think about it because the entire RPG Creed framework de-emphasized momentum and de-emphasized flow and de-emphasized movement in a very real way. So I guess they kind of felt free to do that because they're like, people are not going to be parkouring around anyway. Like,
I hate that so much because they could have made it so that we can have an RPG Creed that also lets you parkour around.
yeah,
The cities could have been better and the moveset could have been better despite the massive deserts or you know, grasslands.
I genuinely wouldn't mind like, I don't know, AC2 like with a leveling system and like with gear and like random loot, like just to see what it feels like. You know, like if somebody could mod that, like just as an experiment, because then we would be able to point to it and be like, look, like this works. Like this is actually fun to play. You know, we could have the movement, we could have like the you know, build layer.
I do think that personally, right? Like if something like that was done, it would make AC2 a less ideal experience for me personally. But as long as the movement is there, that's that baseline requirement for my enjoyment of an AC game.
Yeah.
If there's that movement still, I'm still gonna love the game, even though it's a bit less ideal than what I want. I think the best, like the objectively best way of showing things, you know, showing how you can make parkour work and different gameplay aspects work with leveling is adding good movement and good level design to the RPGs. Though that's, you know, that's very, very hard. You're probably gonna find someone adding leveling to AC2 sooner, even if that's extremely hard to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is a universe where
Isolate it.
yeah, there is a universe where we do see better movement added to this like you know, added to this new paradigm of AC just because
Yep.
I mean, yeah, like yeah, certainly because we're probably not going to see the inverse as you said. Getting good at classic AC. There's a lot of different ways to do it. You know, it starts off very simply. If you notice your character doing things you don't want him to do, release one of your buttons sometimes whenever you get to situations like that. That's it. Just that by itself would make you twice as good instantly. And then after that, look at the world and pay attention and look ahead to like where you're going and identify opportunities to like eject off of stuff.
Yep.
That is pretty much
Watch
it.
choreo is like watch gameplay. What can I do here? Maybe maybe you're never gonna see something by yourself, but then you watch a really nice video. It does something crazy with like an eject or like a freeform jump and grabs something, and then you're like, God damn.
Yeah.
And you start seeing this everywhere later.
That's how I learned to play classic AC because I mean, I grew up on the hiddenblade.com and
Oh, that place, yeah. The
I
birthplace of Titans, that place.
extremely important. Like I mean, original AC skillers and techers like really just came from there. Like
missed that.
way back in the day. And I'm really glad. I think everyone there would be happy to see like the soul of that like still lives on. You
True.
know, like I think that's really important and that means a lot to us. But back then, like that's how I learned parkour, and that's how I learned movement, like to a great extent, because the games didn't really teach me ejects. But I remember watching the Bleeding Effect expert gameplay in Assassin's Creed, right, which is an incredible video, and I saw like ejects done there, and I was like, what is that? Like, can I just jump sideways like that? And I started doing it everywhere, and like that's how I learned it. And so I think this idea of just being able to see what is possible, that stuck with me. Whenever I'm like making content about games, I really do want to show people those kind of things. Did you know that this is a thing you can do very easily all the time?
There's one thing that comes down to non-parkour stuff in the old schools as well that people overlook, and it's such a key feature. You can throw smoke bombs at guards from AC Brotherhood onwards.
Yes,
With
yes.
a quick throw.
Yeah.
People don't know this.
Yeah, they don't. You just like lock a dude and then boom. I would kind of like staple this to modern AC fan sensibilities like around 2014 was like, hey, did you know you can play Brotherhood like Unity? And people were like, whoa.
Brotherhood is literally Unity.
There's a lot of different ways to get better at classic AC. To some players, is very comforting because you can be a new player, you can get into these games, and if you struggle with one aspect of the game, you can get better at another one until you're feeling more comfy, and then you can go
True.
back to the other ones and then like raise the rest of your knowledge, right? So
It's all very organic. The amount of synergy that the games apply to like the different interaction between the different systems, whether it's parkour, stealth, and combat. Of course, stealth relates more to parkour.
yeah,
You can just kind of section off what you're learning and how you're learning it and slowly get better at things in a way that's so natural and so flowy. You never really feel like you're doing work to get there. You're just playing the game and coming across new things to do.
yeah, constantly you like figure out some small trick and then it just makes you better, you know, and it just makes you have more fun the next time you play. I think that's part of what makes classic AC very replayable, in addition to just like their length. Like they're quite short games, certainly compared to like modern games.
True.
Like it's very nice to just, you know, that's part of the reason I've replayed them so many times, is just because it's not a pain to replay them. You know, I just go back and be
Give
like,
them a couple more replays. I've been parkour maxing essentially.
yes, parkour maxed and movement pilled.
I should really get back to like replaying some of them because I want to re-experience that. Problem is there's just nothing like the first time.
There really isn't, yeah. Except short of just like leaving a long time in between replays and then going back and being like, wow.
That's something I'm subconsciously doing. I
Yeah.
think that's exactly what I'm actually kind of.
I do the same, you know, people are like, Leo, why don't you like stream like an AC marathon again? Like it's something that's content people pretty much just always want from me. Like every time they're like, Leo, play AC1 to Mirage, like on stream, like all of them. I leave a long gap in between playthroughs so that I can go back and like really enjoy the games and just like freak out and have a good time. You
Fair.
know?
I think that's something I'm kind of subconsciously doing. I want to
Mhm.
give them some time to kind of like sit there while still honing my gameplay. Well, not exactly gameplay skills. I've been playing with parkour for so long and focusing on it for so long that I'm just kind of bad at the rest of the game.
Yeah, no, I fully get that. I mean, honestly, for me, I see it as almost like a good thing. Whenever I take a
Yeah.
long break from AC and I go back, I don't know if it's just me or I'm crazy, but I kind of enjoy the feeling of like being not so great at the games again. Because then as I play, like,
Like replaying AC2,
yeah,
there were some ejects you missed there, and I was like, damn.
I know, yeah, I was like, dude, like this is crazy. And then like as I kept playing, like I got better and better again and like I regrew that skill. Yeah, and I love that feeling. And like when people are watching me, they're just like, is this really Leo okay? I'm just like, yes. Like I just haven't played it for a very long time, so I can show you like it's fun to like suck at these games and to like get better at them. Like it's fun.
Yep, yep.
Like you don't have to be afraid of like, you know,
Watch your own guide, Leo. Come on. Can't stress just how much of a lifesaver that video is for so many people.
yeah, I'm really glad. Like again, I still get comments on it. People are like, you help me enjoy the game, and I'm just like, that's exactly what I want to do. You know, another video people tend to enjoy is like philosophical discussion video one time. Play AC the way you want to, right? And like I don't know how many people saw that, but there's this weird idea that some people have. On occasion I used to see it a lot more where people are like guide makers or content creators, like they just want you to play AC a specific way, and I'm just like, no. Like there is no right way to play Assassin's Creed. Like just play it the way that you enjoy and have fun. Like the only reason I make the things I make is to just help people reach for that fun and help people like start to enjoy it. But if you don't need,
Eyes as well.
yeah, like if you don't need to like look at this stuff and you're just enjoying yourself, then I'm actually fully fine with you doing the opposite of what I do. You know, like totally.
Yeah.
That's
The only thing that guides do is they show you, hey, you can do this. It's on the player to choose whether they're gonna use it or how they're gonna use it.
yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we were going to talk about is, would extra dev time have really made Unity actually good for classic fans? Because by that point in time, like Assassin's Creed had already begun to be modernized. And sure, like one of the reasons people really love and value Unity is because it does represent this vibe of like we're trying to express classic AC principles in like a modern, like next gen at the time game. But when you look at the game, even if it wasn't its ideal form, even if it had like 7 extra years of like development or whatever, you know,
10 years. Let's give it 10 years of
yeah,
extra
if it
development.
had all the time in the world that it needed, like, maybe it still wouldn't have been the game that like AC1 to Rev fans like truly would love. And that's something I want to talk about because you brought it up as a topic, and I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, so the thing is, Unity from the get-go conceptually employs certain design philosophies that really scream, we were never really gonna make this more, how you wanted it to be. For example, Unity is completely and utterly focused on having pretty animations and having them play to the last keyframe. Everything you do has to finish. Every pretty twirl, every single time Arno moves his pinky finger has to finish before you can do something else. Animation canceling is not just something you do to be faster, it's this access to granularity, to control, to different contexts. Unity doesn't let you do it.
Yeah.
It boxes you in for every single move that you're in and tells you, okay, gotta wait till that's done and then hope that the next move does what you want it to do. That's the thing, like, even though it looks fluid, when you're trying to tell the game what you want to do, when you're trying to express your intent through controls, the game doesn't know what your next move is. It can't, it can never perfectly predict what you're going to want to do during a certain animation playing.
It's never been
So
able
you
to,
need to
like,
have
even in the classic
cancelability.
games.
Absolutely. And that's why cancelability helps you say, okay, I actually wanted to do that after this certain amount of time in this animation. Unity doesn't let you. You don't have that granularity. You wanted to do a side eject onto something that was like up to Arno's head height, but he just did a wall run that's like 3 of his heights. And now you have to do a parkour down there. You lost so much time. You lost accessibility to different objects that were in front of that beam. If you're like trying to target a beam, for example, it, it takes away from control on top of taking away from speed, on top of taking away from like just expressing your intent and having it be respected.
In order to play Unity as fast as possible, you have to almost. It's gonna sound weird, but I feel like, again, this is something people will intuitively just be like, oh my god, like, you're right. You have to almost treat it as a turn-based game.
Yeah.
To get really good at Unity, you have to like learn when animations end, because that is the only time you can anticipate like the next thing will happen.
On top of that, there's always a chance of failing. So the the conclusion is, hey, Unity is actually AC Rebellion, that mobile game where every single move has like a specific percentage of like a success rate.
Oh, and it's a turn-based game. Damn.
One thing with ACUFixes is that it's only ACUFixes if you previously enjoyed ACU. It's very unlikely for you to fully be able to appreciate what Unity does with the fixes mod if you weren't already trying to see the good in it, trying to see some enjoyment out of it, if you really can't, play with it.
Yeah, like if you hate the
It's
game,
not guaranteed to fix the game. It's not a full fixes.
yeah. The reason I enjoy it is because when I play Unity, I'm constantly trying to play it as if it's like AC1 to Rev. And so what ACUFixes does is it takes that game and it's like, okay, let's push this a little closer in feel to AC1 to Rev. I can fling myself in any direction and then just like hold catch ledge and start to trust it now. That just by itself like already makes me be like,
That's
cool.
nice. That basically makes it Kenway catch ledge. Because I don't think a lot of people realize why ledge grabs are so inconsistent in the Kenways. It's not because they're inconsistent, but because their rule set is unhinged levels of stupid. Do you know how ledge grabs work in the Kenway specifically?
Not like down to like game logic, but I know how they work to the point where like I could make them work for me like on stream, for example, like most of the time.
You can only grab if you're in a free form airtime.
Right. Makes
If
sense.
your jump is heading towards any context, any prescriptive hang, foot landing, a swing, anything, you can't grab in that airtime, even if it's extremely long and it's something that you needed to like grab onto so that you can eject off into a different direction at a specific point of your trajectory to that
Right.
destination.
Makes sense.
And Unity basically does it so that, again, in all freeform states, you can ledge grab. But then again, with ACUFixes, even if you enable the ledge grab improvements, you still can't grab in a prescriptive trajectory, I think,
Yeah.
unless I'm wrong.
You are right. Like you do have to be like in fall state, basically.
Yeah, like just not heading for anything, not searching for any context. You just jumped into thin air, and there's like a baseline trajectory applied to you.
Yeah, like if Arno targets a beam and I'm like jumping toward the beam, I cannot hold catch ledge to like cancel out of the trajectory.
And that's something that the old schools It's a very overlooked advantage of the old schools where if you're in air, you can grab, except for that short like time delay in
Yeah.
AC1 to Brotherhood where
And
you can't.
that's something I mentioned in that like classic AC movement guide where I'm like you want to
Yep.
always be in control, and when you're airborne the only input you have is catch ledge, so you should always be ready to
Yep.
use that.
Funnily enough, Revelations, even when vanilla kind of cooked, because you can instantly grab with the hook blade after any move. The problem is that before the mod, the hook blade grabs you were so goddamn slow.
Yeah.
And there was only one consistent way of canceling this slowness, which was tutorialized by Reclusive Starfish, an amazing player. I don't know if you've come across him before.
I've heard of reclusive starfish, yeah.
Yeah, and he basically tutorialized like how to in vanilla cancel a hook blade grabs, but now that the mod fixes it, it's a different game. You can
Hmm.
grab anything and eject instantly as if it's a perfect grab.
How does making content change the way we see games? It makes us a little bit more insane and has certain impacts on our mental health, I would say.
You're just a tiny bit insane. You fucking passed through that cha-cha real smooth because I'm a different man now. I'm a different guy. I'm not the same guy from before the channel started existing.
It really also just depends on like the level of rigor you have for yourself. Because I mean, when people are like, Leo, how many attempts did it take you to do that like Robespierre mission in Unity, like Stealth Reaper? Because that was like Unity on base PS4, which is not the most reliable piece of software in the world. Same thing with like Hoarders, because that's my most like iconic Stealth Reaper video, is that like Hoarders video. I genuinely don't remember if it was 100, 200, or 500. It's one of those.
I don't know how you counted. I never counted, but I'd probably be in the thousands for multiple like videos of mine.
Yeah, and then of course like I had that one VOD, that stream that I put up on my channel where it's like the making of a Stealth Reaper, where I'm trying to do bottom of the barrel, and it's literally just 4 hours of resets for like
Yep.
8 minutes of footage, basically.
Oh my.
I'm like, this is what it takes. Like, so everyone who thinks like, oh, they're just gods, like they just get it on the first try, and it's like, wouldn't that be nice? Like,
I think it's right. This gets closer and closer to truth as you go backwards with the games towards the old schools.
mm-hmm.
When you do the old schools, so many of your moves just accurately happen that unless you're really fishing out for some insanely niche interactions, you can actually get a run down to good accuracy in a good while. But then again, if you're a perfectionist, oh my god, I fucking hate being a perfectionist.
Yeah, you can produce some really incredible stuff, but you know, it's not free.
It's really not. And another thing worth noting is I don't think a lot of people who don't do choreography really notice just how terribly the time needed to make a video scales with its length. A 1 minute long video is like a couple of hours of tries at most.
Yeah.
A 2 minute long video is 3 to 4 days. A 3 minute video is like a week to a couple of weeks. And a 4 to 5 minute choreo is good fucking luck.
With some games that are like more unstable as well, or that become more unpredictable as time goes on, or like as duration increases, it just gets absolutely crazy. I mean, that is why that 8 minute footage of Unity took
8 minutes in Unity.
yeah
Fuck.
took 4 hours. Yeah, it took 4 hours to get right, because if something goes wrong and if something like looks bad, or you know a mechanic straight up fails, then that's a reset, and the longer you go, the more likely you are gonna have to reset. Result oriented but outcome independent. You have to not care about like the individual outcome, but you have to be result oriented. So like you're going for a specific result, but you cannot care about the individual outcomes, because you will lose your mind.
Unity fucks you up here or there. You just have
You just have to accept it.
If not, it's never getting done.
Yeah, you just have to
The
accept
old schools
it.
you can pass without this, but with Unity you just can't.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean honestly, like in any game, like even with old school AC, like it's not flawless. Like there will still, because it's a game, it's software. Like you cannot 100% translate your intent like in any game. Even like the best games ever made, like there's still some level of how would I even say, like data loss in like transmitting your intention. So
Yeah, it's impossible to do it
yeah,
perfect.
it's impossible. And so like if you're any kind of creator, like you have to expect failure. You have to expect that you're going to be doing this like multiple times, you know.
And that is my problem.
Yes, yes.
I very rarely roll with failure. If I don't get to correct it with something that looks smooth, or if it's something that was like a really important part of a run and like was crucial to the flow, if I failed that, it's over. We're restarting.
I've had moments in Syndicate where I'm like aiming a throwing knife at a guard and a civilian literally walks in front of my knife just as I
Oh my
throw it.
god.
And I'm just like, all right, that's cool. Like, I'm sure. Thanks. Great. like,
We are
on a more serious note, like making content for games does make you see them differently. Like both
Yep.
it improves your skill as a player like significantly because you're getting a lot of reps, a lot of repetition, a lot of practice like doing the same thing over and over. And so you're very quickly learning and memorizing the consequences and the unfoldings of like different actions under different contexts, right? So like
Yep.
as an example, like if you're someone who's recording like a parkour run in a game, you're gonna very quickly learn like the nuances and little quirks of movement across certain object chains. And so now like
Yep.
even when you're playing the game normally, that's in your head now. You can't really like unremember it, right? And so
Yeah.
now you kind of just have this, and when you're playing normally, you're kind of just better at movement in general. And the same applies to stealth.
Absolutely.
Like you learn certain, patterns from stealth, and this you really start to just figure out like, wow, this applies to like a lot of different video games. Like many stealth games are kind of just programmed in very similar ways, right? And so
True.
now that
They
you
follow the same principles widely.
yeah, exactly. And so like now that you know that, like you kind of just those skills transfer over. Like you can kind of play Ghost of Tsushima very similarly to the way you would play like many Assassin's Creeds, Shadow of Mordor,
Mhm.
Arkham to some extent, you know.
It's very interesting because the dynamic of making a choreo and thinking it through and then executing it, both of those parts, both the creation and recording, add to different like parts of your skill set.
Hmm.
So when you're actively like trying to create a choreo, you're looking through the environment, you're trying to process it. That kind of gives you a lot of knowledge and skill and kind of visual muscle memory, I guess, on how to process everything around you.
Yeah.
But then the part where you're recording really hones your reliability in different moves and how precise you are and how good your timings are going to be. So
Yeah.
choreography makes you better in basically every way because of the different ways in which you pull it off.
Yeah, like for example, like if you're someone who makes choreo for games, you start to get very good at like risk assessment in a way
Yep.
that like normal players just don't need to worry about.
Yep.
Because a lot of the
Especially
times,
like,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
What I was about to say is like a lot of the times like normal players just don't really care about um certain gravities of failure, like certain
Yeah.
weights of failure. And so, you can kind of afford to like try certain stuff, and then if it doesn't work, then it doesn't really matter that much, right? Like you're fine.
Hmm.
You're not dead, your character still has HP, so like you just live and you just keep playing. But if you're choreographing something, you're trying to make it look good, so certain risky actions under certain contexts, maybe you're going to avoid those because if you mess up here, especially if you're like on minute 7 of an 8-minute video, uh,
Yeah.
like maybe I don't want to take those risks, like I'm kind of scared. Like that's
The thing is as well, when you're doing choreography, at least this is the case with me. Once I started doing it, the choreographer brain never fucking shuts off.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
this means that as you're playing a game, even naturally just trying to roam around or do a mission for your own pleasure, not for making content, you're still going to be reading the environment as you would be if you were doing choreo. And if you have a lot of choreos under your belt, that means, hey, you're instantly going to figure out that context doesn't work. I'm going to fail that easily. The other one, exactly what you said, like what's going to work, what isn't going to work, and you know the gravities of different fail states and how worth it is to go for something on a grander scale than just one single move.
Yes, yes. And I think that brings to mind something really, really important that people may or may not think about. And that's that
Mhm.
people who make content for games, especially people who choreo games, they tend to play different genres. Like people will look at
Yep.
me and they'll be like, you play like Destiny? Like you play MMORPGs? Like you play these genres and games that have, like you play fighting games that have like nothing to do with like stealth and like, you know,
Yep.
and I'm just like, do you know why? It's because when I play those games, I'm not constantly seeing these patterns and like I get to actually just enjoy it as a gamer, like
So would you say that the conclusion is if you want to be a good choreographer, you have to be insane?
yes, but it's like it happens in reverse. where like becoming a good choreographer makes you insane. Like because you're subjecting yourself to a lot of like, either that or you're just like a very mentally well-adjusted individual. Like an example is like Hayate Bahadori, who makes the no damage runs. You could think of him as like the first rogues chat I ever had like on the channel. I had like a long, because he no damage ran every single Assassin's Creed game in the entire series, and he didn't just do it segmented. He did it like start to finish, no checkpoint reloads, nothing. If he ever took damage at any point, he restarts the entire playthrough from new game. He did that for every single Assassin's Creed game in the series. If you have not listened to that chat and that podcast, I highly recommend it. I'll link it to you after. That player is, first of all, just incredible at what he does. I believe he's an engineer in real life, and some of those mindsets and some of those like perspectives, like, and problem solving and like staying calm, like definitely transfer over. Like think about like when I talk to that guy, he's actually very much the opposite of like, like he's very calm, emotionally intelligent, solid as a rock, basically. Like you get the sense that like nothing could ever bother this guy. When you consider what he does, like it makes sense why, because you kind of have to build up that like mental resilience and like meditative like mentality in order to be able to withstand like the amount of pressure and the horrible feeling of failure. Like imagine a game like Valhalla, like it's a very long game. You just get unlucky. You just get hit by like a stray piece of fire, like that you stepped on the ground, or like an arrow just like randomly hit you like out of nowhere, where like on all of your previous playthroughs, like it would never hit you. And it just does that time. Like what a monk of a man you have to be in order to like just to be chill with that. My conclusion is to be good at like making skill-based content on games, you either have to be insane or you have to be like the most sane, like mentally like adept individual like in the world. You have to pick one extreme. Which one you do is up to you, but you're gonna end up picking one.
See, on the surface, I don't know how you would describe me. I tend to think I'm relatively chill. I'm like relatively okay.
Yeah.
But never join the VC at 4 a.m. when I'm streaming trying to choreo something.
Yes. I become a different person. There, like, I mean, if you looked at my if you ever just for amusement value, like click on the making of a Stealth Reaper video, which is that VOD of like the 4-hour stream. There are so many times where like in hour 1 you would hear me be like, oh fuck, I'm like swearing, I'm getting mad. But then like hour 3, you hear me like slamming my escape key, tapping down arrow like really like aggressively multiple times, slamming enter on like the restart checkpoint button, and I'm just like breathing into the microphone. Like,
bro, like if you ever join VC at like 4 or 5 a.m. and you see me streaming, you're instantly gonna get met with like cries of sadness, despair, and aimlessness.
yes.
Like it's genuinely just me laughing like a fucking lunatic
Yes.
because something random failed.
That's how it goes. You
Oh
you
man.
got you got to find a way to be okay with it, and you can either like let it bounce off you or like ride the madness. And they're both valuable. They're both valid. Just pick your play
Because
style.
it works.
Yeah, it does.
Sometimes someone tells you, "Hey, you're not gonna do this. You fell off," and then out of spite, you just gain this godly amount of skill and knowledge and precision, and just one try it.
Yep. Yep, that's how the Unity no upgrades run came about to begin with, is because people were like, you criticize Unity because you're bad at the game, and I was just like, okay, let's find out together, shall we? And I had never done anything like that before in my life.
These things happened to myself when I was recording my longest run to date, like the longest like one taker run that I made. It's the Istanbul Heights one, the Revelations one, and that's almost 5 minutes of parkour.
Ooh.
And I basically was in deep despair because I was trying to record that shit for about a month, and I wasn't getting it down. And then it happened that this was around the time when like the Mirage gameplay trailers were coming out. So I took a bit of a break from trying to choreo for like 4 to 8 hours, and I was just kind of sitting in like a voice call with I think Brooks, and we were kind of like talking about different things that we wanted to see in Mirage and whatnot. And then I come back to it at like 4 a.m. and Kino asks me, yo, how long is the run again? I was like, okay, let me check. And then I get into the fucking game, all like, oh yeah, I'm not making this. And I start like I run my timer to see how long the run roughly is. And then I realize, wait, this is going really well. This is going really, really well. It's the third minute and this is still going well. And I first tried it after like 8 hours of not trying anything.
That's fantastic. I love that.